Welcome back to the PreVetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Our guest today is Joseph Nagle from Pando Electric. Thank you, Joseph, for
thanks for having
me in real life.
Absolutely. And I think it's great to be your first live show.
Yes. yes.
Perfect.
Awesome. And we're at a beautiful location today. So
yeah, we're in the SSF offices. This is done through the Chamber of Commerce for the city of San Francisco. And so to help promote a lot of the startups here, they provide us this great office space to just come and use, and it's completely free.
Awesome. So before we start talking about Pando Electric, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I moved out here back in 2013. I had been living in Barcelona, Spain as a freelance writer, trying to do that. It never really got off the ground. It was very difficult. And I really just had this draw. I love tech, and I just wanted to be around it more. And, I met a bunch of people at Mobile World Congress who convinced me to move to the Bay Area. So I packed up all my stuff, and I came here with nothing but a backpack full of clothes and hopes and dreams. And, lo and behold, I ended up getting an internship at Nokia. And I just slowly worked my way up through the company, and, the rest is kind of history. And just slowly over time got more interested in emerging technologies like electric vehicles, and just moving, through. And in the Bay Area is great for stuff like that. You just meet so many different people who are working on really cool projects. And so it's always been interesting to just keep seeing what else I can do.
Yeah. I mean, I love coming to the Bay Area because it's like a bubble of innovation, right? And then everyone else in the world is kind of like following what is happening here. It's kind of living 2 or 3 years ahead of time.
A little, yeah. Definitely.
I was talking a little bit about before we started recording about we both share an experience with working at Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
And when I was working at Microsoft on the pre-sales team, I was kind of doing that, learning about new products before they were launched. And then I was teaching people about that.
Yeah.
Right? So people were like, "Oh, you're so smart. You know about all this stuff." Well, I'm reading it and then I can tell you about it, right? And I tested, see how. So it was kind of like living in the future-ish, It was kind of.
That's the best part about working at one of those big companies, because you end up getting access to all these little new things that are coming along that you just barely heard a little bit about, but then you get to learn it from the ground floor. And then you do kind of end up becoming a de facto expert, because there's just not a lot of people out there who know about it yet.
Right. Yeah. I even did a course about, they were launching .NET.
Yeah.
I think it was called that something different before. They had 2 or 3 names throughout the launching
Typical
process.
Microsoft.
Yeah. They even have, I don't know if you saw that, they have this acronym search.
Yeah, God.
So
I hated those acronyms.
So you could search for an acronym and then you have like 2 or 3 responses for the same words.
Yeah.
It was very crazy. So my first language that I learned was ASP before joining Microsoft. What I used to build my first startup. Then I joined Microsoft. I learned about ASP.NET. I didn't quite like it. It was like, there's something missing here. And then I went to learn Ruby on Rails and I love it, right? So anyway, that's kind of how I got into that. So San Francisco is kind of like that. It's like living a little bit in the future, but also here we learn about all the things that could be.
Yes.
Right. Some become, some do not, which is kind of part of the startup.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, but what you guys are doing on Pando Electric, from what I understand, is a much more, grounded innovation, right?
Yeah, it really is. I think in general, and it's crazy because I've been in the EV charging business for over a decade now.
Right.
And the fact that nobody was really thinking about socket-based charging until more recently it kind of does blow my mind.
Right.
And so I am starting to be more mindful of that in my later career, of looking at how do we simplify technology? And I think that's what Pando really did well, was take this slightly complicated system of traditional charging systems and then simplify it down to what people actually need, which is simple access to energy. You don't need this big charging station that has all these bells and whistles. You just need an outlet on the wall that has a meter in it that can kind of track how much energy is going through it, and then you bill each person. It's pretty simple and straightforward. And that's where we've kind of run into a little bit of a problem and a great opportunity. Because the problem is that a lot of what people have already been sold or learned is now kind of aging rapidly. And so when I come in with this, like it's a smart outlet, there's not, it's a smart outlet, but it's an outlet. There's nothing like that would confuse you about it. But it's very confusing when people expect to see an EV charger and you pull out an outlet and they're just like, what is this?
Right.
And you're like, well, it's an outlet. Like, there's nothing fancy about this. But that's kind of where like I really think Pando like has the right solution for this, like to solve the problems that we're seeing in the multifamily space.
Yeah, I think that the building hype, it's very appealing because you attract a lot of eyes, right? We were talking about, I think last week we talked about the, this robotic arm that, connects with the car. And, it sounds cool, right? But in practice,
Right, yeah. It's impractical.
It's impractical.
Yeah, it's very expensive. It solves a problem that doesn't exist. It's a solution looking for a problem.
That's eventually the battery chemistry is going to evolve.
Right.
So it's the robotic arm is going to, the needs are going to be different.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So I don't know if it's going to be one way or another, but it's going to change. So I think that one of the things that I find very interesting about what you guys are doing is that it's like have you heard about these boring businesses, right? Like
Yeah.
and I say it in a positive way,
right?
Like, because it's it sounds like a boring problem, but that means that you have a lot of potential, plus you have a solution that can last for a long time.
Absolutely.
And that for me is hype is great, right? Having flying cars sounds interesting, right? But
slightly dangerous.
I remember not Futurama. What is the name? The Winston, the Jetsons. That's the future that people imagine in the 50s.
Right. Yeah.
So we're nowhere near there, right?
No.
But it sounds great on the cartoons, right? But then when you have to put it in real life, then I think that's where the boring solution-ish, right, are the ones that are going to be, are going to have more impact on the long term.
Totally. I think it really boils down to like the usability for a lot of those products. Like when you have something that's boring, I come from marketing, so I'd say simplistic. But yeah, like you want to simplify things down so that it's like, it's not scary to use. It's easy to use. I think Mac is like Apple, Macs in general, like that's kind of their whole thing. It's still complicated, but comparative to like a PC and all the different things that you can do with a PC, like, Macs have simplified things down to make it a lot more easy to use, more approachable. And I think the same thing happens with Pando Electric when you're just taking something that's more complicated and you're just pulling out the stuff that you don't need. Right. And one of the biggest things that you don't need is this cable that's attached. And now there's all these issues with this cable that's been attached to it because people are stealing it or they just break all the time. And then it goes back to the person who bought the station in the first place has to constantly maintain this system, and then they don't make any money, and it becomes like a big revenue drain on them because they're constantly having to maintain the system, constantly having to fix it. And it just is something where you realize like, well, what if I just removed the cable from the device and had the EV driver just bring a cord that plugs in to the outlet and then they have their own cable. And then the property owner is not on the hook for the breakage or the theft. Right. And they still have an EV charging station. So there's always going to be the person who can come in and charge from that spot. And if, God forbid something bad happens to your cable, right? That doesn't affect me or the rest of the people. I can still use that station. You're going to have to end up, going out and buying another one, which is a downside to you as the EV driver. But as the station owner, I don't have to fix the station. And as like the other EV drivers on site, I still get to use the station too. So like to be able to do all that by just simply removing the cord is a big change. And I think it will actually get more property owners interested in installing EV charging because it's now something where they're not having to constantly pay more and more money into the system.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, it's like laptops. You have this cable, right? And then, but you have a connector on both sides.
Right.
So the laptop is mobile and you have the wall plug. Yeah.
Very simple.
If the cable breaks, then you can change it, right?
What you've just called out is something that I've been trying to get people to understand for a very long time, which is that electric vehicles have a lot more in common with like a laptop or your phone than they do a traditional vehicle.
It's a laptop on wheels.
Yes, it is.
Yes. I agree. And I was listening to a short on social networks, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of refer to those type of things like that because they are less reliable information than, when you find the right source, right? So call it rumors if you like, But in Spain, they were talking about limiting the EVs to the buildings because of the fire hazards.
Right.
And one of the most important fire hazard issues was the charging station.
Yeah.
Right. So they were like, oh well, we don't want the electric car to fire and then affect the whole building. Right. Where combustion engines, they're less likely to get on fire, but also they can be shut off by the fire department much easier. Right. So I think that your solution can also help on that. Right?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple of things that go on in with that. So number one, EVs are actually a lot less likely to combust. I mean, internal combustion engine, it's in the name.
Right.
And it's driving around a giant tank of gas, which is effectively a bomb. But and this same argument, which is crazy, if you go back and you look into like the early 90s when cars were just starting to come around.
EV first.
They were EV first, and the inverse was happening where they were like, we don't want gasoline cars parking in, or near buildings. We don't want gas stations near schools or anything because they were so terrified of this stuff catching on fire and causing chaos. So it's the same basic argument. The reason that it is something that's really important is because of the battery pack. And you can't put out a battery pack with just water. You can, but you essentially have to submerge it and keep it submerged for a significant amount of time. So it's unlikely that's going to happen in a building. You have to have like a special foam. So from our perspective, we do want to build in like a lot of protections around that. So our system has actually been designed from the ground up. Our CEO and founder, Aaron Lee, is a really talented engineer. He comes from Apple. He built the Apple Watch, designed it. And so a lot of what he built into that, what he calls Apple quality. And one of the things he wanted to build in was a lot of safety features. So that a bunch of sensors inside the device. It's monitoring the current, temperature, voltage, anything like that. If anything falls outside of a normal range, it'll immediately shut off and send us a signal to let us know, hey, something happened on this device. You either need to reset it, which is 99% of what we have to do, or hey, this issue keeps popping up. You need to send somebody out there to actually take a look at it. And then the really nice thing about the nature of our device is that instead of having to send an electrician to open it up and do all this stuff, we just send them a new device and then just say, hey, just in the box, you take it off the wall, you put that in the box, send that back, and then put the new one on. And then you don't have to worry about it. We'll figure it out on our end. So it's not like we're going to sit and tinker with this thing that's been throwing up lots of red flags. You just send it back to us and we'll get another one out to you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading about that, the Apple refurbished devices, they have much more quality checks than the not regular products, right? Because for some reason they failed and then they're coming back, so they have to double check, fix, triple check. So and I think that the ethos around delivering quality products and safe product, I think that's very important because that's what actually has impact on people's life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the same ideology that we keep at Pando Electric, which is we want to make sure that, even though it's just an outlet on a wall, we do want people to have the understanding that there's a lot of quality built into that blue box. So anytime they see that blue box, they know hey, this is a premium outlet, something that they know they can trust and use, and it's always going to work. And that's kind of we have to build that in at the very beginning of the company, because you don't want to have the opposite of that, where you build junky product and then you have to convince people that, oh no, I no longer make junky product.
Right. Yeah. One of the reasons I buy Apple products is because of the quality. Right? And the you can go to buy Chinese products, right? And then Chinese products you see the exact same product and they have different qualities.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Which makes it appealing as a manufacturer because they can provide that flexibility. But as a consumer, you don't know which one you're buying. So the other different, following this ethos, right? If you go to the App Store, right, on Apple, it's much harder to get in.
Yes.
And the screening they do for the applications on the App Store is much more thorough. Where on Android it's anybody can get in. So you can find 10 calculator apps, but they all suck in different ways, right? So at this point, right? I mean, it's almost perfect, but suck here, they suck there. So whereas on the App Store you have one, maybe two options, right? But they're really good options. The best. Yeah. So from what you're describing, it's kind of like that, right? You're
Absolutely
working to to build one box that is going to be the highest quality possible. It's going to have all the checkpoints and security inside, and it's going to be as safe as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the other side of it. Is like the one last thing that I'll point out is that we also designed it to last forever. Like it's designed to be 15,000 cycles, meaning one cycle is a plug in and an unplug. So we test those things all day and night to get up to 15,000 cycles because we want to make sure that they'll last. If you do that once a day, that's about a 40-year lifespan for that product. And so we want to make sure that when people buy these, they're not, 10 years later, oh, we got to get rid of them because they're broken. It's like, no.
Right.
This is the only one you're going to have. You're going to have it for the next 40 years. And then whenever there's a new technology that you want to integrate in, you can do that then. And you've had 40 years of usable life, which is, well beyond what any of our competitors are doing.
Right. You're talking about the connector? Or you're talking
the connector and then the whole box as well. But the connector is the biggest piece because that's the thing that's being used most often.
Right. It's the part that is going to mechanically get wear out.
Correct. Yeah. So you want to make sure that that is the most robust piece because it's really the only failure point that exists on the entire device.
Right. I had a friend that used to do windshield wear test.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they had to do like 1 million, 2 million cycles, right? Every cycle was like from different conditions, right? So I always find fascinating when, so I'm talking about this was in the late 2000s. He would have a Skype webcam connected to it, because he will let it run and then he will go home and then, we were hanging out on the weekend and he was like, look, he will pull up his computer and it's like, look, I'm doing this. And you can see the wipers going on a windshield, just hanging out.
Oh, man.
So anyway, I find those type of, stress tests fascinating.
It's really just brute forcing something like that, yeah.
Plus, it's a kind of inner child of, I want to see when it breaks. It's like, it broke. It's we're so silly on that sense. But anyway, it's interesting that you're testing that because that's one of the things that are going to get the more wear. And then once you have that connector working, then you can, you have that standardization, you can upgrade eventually the box if the technology changes, which I don't know. We don't know what is going to happen with EVs, right?
That's actually one of the bigger things that we designed for is the unknown. So that's why we made it a NEMA connector. So in the United States, the NEMA standard has been around for over 100 years. Every single socket that you see in the US is based on the NEMA standard. So we know that no matter what, Elon, will come up in a ketamine phase. We'll think of next, if he I want to change everything again, like for us, it doesn't matter, right? Because we know that every single car on some level will be able to plug into a NEMA outlet because that's always going to be access to energy. And so it just makes perfect sense in our minds to say, we'll just keep on this structure. It's old, but we know it's reliable. We know it's always going to be there. So no matter what happens into the future, they'll always be able to use this.
Yeah, it's future proof because it's proven reliable.
Yes.
Yeah. When it gets there, it's, what's the point of...
there's no... if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yes. So one of the reasons it's appealing for the managers of buildings is that it's kind of set and forget.
That is correct.
Right?
Yeah.
They are running so many things. They are, they don't want to add one more thing for them to check. So I understand the appealing for them. For the end user, the appealing is that now you can have more sockets available. You can have your EV and actually being able to charge it, right? Because you have the range anxiety. Then when you get to a place where I think charge point is where you can see where the connectors are, you get there and it's like, it's busy
or broken
or another car parked in, or the cable is broken, which is mostly the case, right? And that makes the EV useless. Right.
Well, and it ruins the whole experience.
It ruins the whole experience.
Yeah. Like, I talk to people about this all the time, because EVs have become like this political statement on some level, which is a shame because we should be able to evaluate these things as just on their merit. And, if you look at an EV based on just merit, it's a better vehicle. It's faster. It handles better. It's better braking. They last longer. You can do more with them. Like you can't power your house with a gas car. So there's like a lot of these things that, people are kind of ignoring or just don't know about when it comes to electric vehicles. But the thing that they focus in on, which is true, is that there are these times and places where you might drive your vehicle somewhere and you just won't have any way to charge it back up. And then that's the fear. Like I drive to, I was just in Santa Cruz last weekend. It's about an hour drive from here. I'm like, well, if I drove there an hour and then I was planning on charging down there and I can't find a station down there, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, yeah, like what do I do?
And what is supposed to be transportation that, you don't really have to, you shouldn't spend too much time thinking about it, right? It should be reliable. It should be, take you from point A to point B, and then you spend as little time as possible. It becomes, now I have to spend 2 hours sitting in a car charge station or whatever. Yeah, theoretically you can charge it in 20 minutes. I don't remember the numbers, but but usually the high speed is not available or it's not working or whatever, right?
Well, and those are really expensive too. So like the idea behind Pando Electric is just affordability.
Right.
Really drive down the cost to like make it as low cost as possible to incentivize the property owner to install them. So now you can put a bunch of these, they're just outlets, truly. So you just put a bunch of these smart outlets everywhere. And now if I go down to Santa Cruz and I stay, at my friend's apartment, well, we can put in this very, low cost EV charging outlet. I bring my cable, I can plug in. I pay for my usage back to the building because there's a payment system there that's built into the charging station. And then I just go about my life. And like the whole idea behind Pando Electric is truly to just be, I wouldn't even say set and forget. Like I just want you to forget. I want you to not even think about charging ever again. You just walk up, you plug in, tap your phone against the charger to unlock it, and then you go about your day. And one of the things that I found really funny is like do an argument with somebody about electric vehicles. And they're like, oh, well, how long does it take you to charge your vehicle? It must be, hours and hours. And I'm like, actually, it takes about 5 seconds because I pull into my house, I park, I plug it in, and then I walk away. And it charges when I'm doing other stuff. And so it's like the same thing with your phone or your laptop, where it's like you don't truly think about it too much. You're just phones especially, doesn't matter like what state of charge the phone is at the end of the day. Likelihood is you're going to charge it up because you want to have a full battery for the next day. And it's the same kind of basic principle that EVs should be operating under.
Yeah, for short commute and 90 charge, that works great.
Right.
Yeah, and but in order to have that, you need to have a lot of availability of chargers.
Totally.
Right? That way, you can park, plug. It takes 5 seconds, and you forget the next day. You unplug, you go to your life, and that's it. If it takes 1 hour, 2 hours of 12, it doesn't matter, right? Because you're sleeping, right?
Yes.
You're not using the car, right? Plus, vehicles are 95% of the time they're
just sitting in a spot anyway,
waiting for you, waiting for the owner, please take me for I think that for that case, the EVs are great. The scenario where you have to do like long haul, or you have to do, if you travel from the East Coast to the West Coast, or whatever, right? Long trips like that, then it makes less sense, because you're traveling and then you expect to have a charger and it's not available. Now you have to wait for it, right? And that's where the charging time becomes important, right?
And it's really important in those scenarios. Right. So like, again, we're in the Bay Area, so I'll use another Bay Area example. Up to Tahoe is about a 4-hour drive. It's highly unlikely that there's a vehicle that exists today that can make that drive round trip. Like you have to stop and charge. And so they keep having to add more and more public charging along that route because it's a very popular place to go and do like a weekend ski trip. And the problem that they run into is that because the charge times are so long, you can come in and park in the spot, charge up in 40 minutes and be gone. But let's say you come in and then I come in and then somebody else comes in and we're all stacked up. So I have to wait for you for 40 minutes and then they have to wait for me for 40 minutes and then the next guy and then just the line just keeps going and going and going. And so we do need to figure out a better way or faster way to charge in those scenarios because of just that fact. Like the cars are going to start to stack up and the only other option you have is adding more vehicle chargers. And it's to some point, in some degree or another, like we can't just, power isn't an infinite resource. You have to generate it. And you can't just keep adding and adding and adding and expect to solve the problem.
That's where the availability of chargers will give you that flexibility.
Right. Like, so instead of me having to use a public charger, let's say that the place that I'm staying in Tahoe has a NEMA 1450 socket, or the hotel I have has a Pando charger in it. Right. So now I know, like, when I go up there, I just charge it at the hotel. I don't have to worry at all. But those are the things that's kind of, you have to figure these little bits and bobs out. And there still is this, public network that is doing the fast charging. But really, I think the biggest point that we need to get to is where most of the places that we're parking our cars, so that would be hotels, homes, and office buildings, you got to have a significant number of charging stations in all of those locations to actually get over this range anxiety issue that a lot of people seem to justifiably be nervous about.
Right. what you were describing about having a standard connector, it doesn't matter which electric car you have.
Correct.
Right? Because now, the Chinese have their own connector, Tesla has a connector. So it's only a matter of having, your cable.
Yes.
And then you can go and connect to the Pando box.
That is correct.
And, you're golden, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so one is the connector, and then the other one, which I was going to ask you, is a charging speed, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming that the Pando box can negotiate with all the brands of cards.
That is true. And so I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about EV charging is that every single EV charger that you can think of in your head is not a charger. The charger's in the car. So the car is the thing that's actually like turning it from DC to AC or vice versa. It's the one dictating how much energy is going into the battery.
Right.
So what we are is just an access point. Truly, we're just a door to get to some chargers or to some energy, right? So
the Panda box does conversion from AC to DC.
No, we don't do any of that. We're an AC charger, and then the car, the onboard charger in the vehicle will do the conversion in there because that's very expensive. It's a heavy piece, probably want it in the car anyway because you want that system to work perfectly. You don't want an outside system to tell your car how much it can take because that might cause a lot of problems. That would cause fires. Yes. But yeah, like it can charge any vehicle on the road. It's a higher power charger. So it's a 9.6 kilowatt output, which is about 50% higher than like a standard level 2. So there's 3 levels of charging. You have your level 1s, which is basically like every outlet in the room that we're in. You could go 110.
110,
Yeah, that's a level 1. Level 2 is a Pando charger. There's a big range in the level 2s. It goes from like 3.3 kilowatts all the way up to 22, which is, and if you know anything about energy, like that's a big difference. One is like a nasty shock and the other one will kill you. And then, so we're kind of like right there in the middle. That'll give you about 300 miles of range, over an 8-hour time period. So you can go from about 0 to 100% in your car overnight. And that's really what anybody actually needs. And the more data we get actually suggests that most people don't even need that much. We see most people charging from 20% to 80%. And the reason a lot of people do that is the happy spot for the battery system. So if you keep their battery between 20 and 80%, the likelihood that that battery is ever going to degrade or go bad is extremely low. And that's something that a lot of people, like one of the things that was talked about with EVs was like, oh, well, the batteries are really expensive to, swap out if they break. That's true. But if you maintain and your battery, it's just like your engine. Like if you make sure you keep getting the oil change, it's unlikely that you're going to have to replace the engine.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the thing with EVs, it's just proper maintenance.
So taxes, the engine lasts way longer, like 5-10 times longer than, normal folks. The reason for that is because they have a different use cycle, right? So they turn it on in the turn the car on in the morning, and then they keep running it throughout the day, right? So the car never goes cold.
Right.
So every time that it's cold and you start it, right, that's when you have most of the engine wear, right?
Right.
So, if you go from your home to your office, right, and then, you start the engine cold, and then you drive, and then you stop it, and then the car gets cold again, and then at 5 p.m. you start the engine again, and you go back home, the tear and wear for the engine is much higher than cab because they keep it hot throughout the day, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, the patterns will be different with the batteries, but yeah, I mean, if you keep it between 20 and 80%, it's going to last much longer, right?
I mean, it should theoretically will last forever.
Oh, really?
It'll last an incredibly long time. Like there's so many stories that you go back and look at the original Tesla Model S's that have come out that have, hundreds of thousands of miles on them already. And the degradation is like 4 or 5% on a car that has 100,000 miles on it. And it's because they've been properly maintaining the battery. Like if you keep it just in that range, typically it really won't ever have any issues. Once you go outside of those ranges, it's fine to do it occasionally. But if you constantly are like going all the way to 100, all the way to 0 and back and forth, it's a similar type of problem of hot, cold, right? So if you let it go too hot or too cold, you're going to have some problems.
Yes. So the use case for the Pando box is destination charge.
Destination, home, and then office space as well.
Oh, an office space, right.
Which is kind of a destination, but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is that when you get to the place,
There's
and
a
you're going to
charger.
stay there. That's a destination. That's
That's
what I'm
correct. Yeah.
defining destination is. It doesn't matter the charging time, right? Or it's less important.
It's like it's minimally important.
It's minimum.
Yeah. Oh,
Because if you go from here to Tahoe, right, and you
right.
stay there overnight, and you have the peace of mind that there's going to be a reliable charger, there's going to be a Pando box, then it doesn't matter how long it takes, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're going to arrive, you're going to stay for the night. The next morning, the car is going to be 100% charged, or 80 if you prefer, right? Depending on
Yeah, so we focus specifically on multifamily charging, so apartments and condos, but really in the reality of it, it's anywhere a car is parked more than 4 hours. That's a perfect spot for a Pando box.
Great.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, do you guys have an app for people to see other Pando boxes and find them, or is mostly for when you go to your home?
Right now, it's mostly for your home. So we don't really I don't want to incentivize people to stay within the Pando network, right? You can use ChargePoint, you can use Blink, you can use my former company, EverCharge. Like those are all fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So it's more just providing charging where you're at currently. So that's kind of the goal, right? So if you're living in an apartment, I want you to have charging. If you're going to a hotel, I want you to have charging. If you're going to work, I want you to have charging. So you can always plug in and charge up when you need to.
Right. I was reading a little bit about the security labels. Can you tell us a little bit about what security labels does the Pando box have, and why are they important?
Right. So we have UL and CSA. That's really from like mostly weatherproofing. Like NEMA 4 like is waterproofing. So you don't want water to be able to get into the outlet because that would be incredibly dangerous. You want to make sure that you also have OCPP, which is an open charge point protocol. That's really for peace of mind, mostly because what we're starting to see is like a lot of these companies that were started up are now failing. And when they fail, you don't want the system and the thing you already paid for to also now be useless, right? And so OCPP helps solve that problem in a way. It's an open source protocol, so nobody's making any money off of it, but it allows like any provider to come in and put their software into that device. So like, Juicebox went out of business. They were not OCPP compliant. So there was no way to bring new software onto those chargers. And so they're just bricked.
Oh, I see.
Right. So you don't have anything that it can't connect to anything, so it won't let you charge. So you put in this OCPP, which allows for a cloud service system to come in, and I can go into your cloud, I can put in my software, and then those chargers then just transfer over to my network. And then the person who bought them, isn't like, well, now I have to replace everything that I just bought.
Right. So it's future proof, and it's you're not locking in the users
Absolutely
to your platform.
Right. And like again, so if anything bad happens, you can actually overcome that. Another really big one here in California is CTEP, which is by the CDFA, which is I don't know the acronym. I could search it up in the Microsoft database. But that program is the same program that regulates gas station pumps. And so it requires that the meters in the Pando box are accurate up to the 4th decimal place, so that as a driver, like, this has been regulated to be accurate up to the 4th decimal place, so that I know that I'm not getting scammed. And when I'm getting electricity, I'm not charging you extra or saying, actually, you used 28 kilowatts when you used 2, right? So it's just basically showing people full transparency. And so that's a very important thing here in the state of California. And there's like a lot of states that also follow that regulation. And then we also do Energy Star, which is kind of just to make sure that when the device is off, it's not actually active.
That's to measure parasitic losses.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually serves a dual purpose. The first one you mentioned, the parasitic loss, but the second one is just general safety, because, it's a garage. There are, children or people walking around. Like, you don't want an active outlet that someone could just like stick something into, and then that's going to cause problems. So basically, if you see a Pando outlet and you jam in, like, a graphite pencil or something like that, nothing's going to happen, because there's actually no active energy until you unlock the device.
Oh, right. Yeah. So it's you're child-proofing the device as well.
Idiot-proofing is more what I
I thought about saying that, idiot-proofing, but I thought child-proofing would sound better. Yeah.
But for me, like, most children know not to stick their finger in there, but I've seen some adults do some pretty stupid things with their outlets, and I'm just like, I shake my head. I'm like, thank God we built in these features.
Yeah. I've seen adults do stupid things with so many things. Yeah. So all these labels are important for safety, efficiency, and safety.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
Yeah, because you really want to make sure that people know, especially with the CTEP, that they know that when I'm buying something, I want to know I'm getting exactly what I paid for.
Right.
And CTEP is what allows for that.
Let me tell you a story. This is, ancillary to what we're talking about, but nevertheless, here in the US, you have 110, 60 hertz, normal outlets. In Argentina, where I used to live, we have 220, 50 hertz. When we buy the computers, and then we have here you have the connectors that are,
right. Yeah.
vertical. In Argentina, we have their V-shape,
Yeah.
right? So, and the reason I mentioned the connectors is important for the story because we would have power units on the PCs, right? With a switch on the back. You could switch it to 220 or 120, 110, right? But then the cable, I don't remember the name of the cable, but this big black cable, you connect it. Now they use that connector for the printers and whatnot. Usually would come with the 110 connector. Eventually we could get the other one, but it was so hard to find that it was better to just, use adapters and whatnot.
Yeah.
So in my house we'd have 110 connectors getting 220, right? Or 110, depending on, how we connected things, right? So we had, because depending on the year of the computer, these things would change. Sometimes we will get the power unit without the switch. The switch eventually came. So we had to have it's not an inverter, it's a
transformer?
Transformer, yeah, thank you. Big piece of
brick.
With we open those up because they have this piece of metal with E shape, and then we would play with them, right? Anyway.
Oh my God.
It was so much fun. Yeah. They're great for to throw them away.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's a piece of metal, right? So if you throw them, it goes. Anyway, we'll play with that. After those break, anyway. So usually we had to double check that because things could go wrong. Right? One day I connected to 220 a power unit. It was this big box on the PC that, but the input was 110, and I had right next to that connector had the transformer with the other connector, but
right.
I plugged it incorrectly. So what happened with that is when you do that, the power unit didn't have any protection for that. So they have these four big capacitors. They will blow out, and then white smoke will come out of the computer. It will make this big bang, and then white smoke, 10, 12, right? So I panic, and the whole room became, with this white smoke. I was like, oh my God, I'm burning down the house.
Yeah.
So anyway, when we were talking about this, we think about security, and idiot-proofing things. Even though I'm a kind of smart monkey, but I did stupid things anyway, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I panic. I blew that thing. Eventually, we had to buy a new power unit to fix it, right? But it was a very common mistake back there because of this.
It's not super complicated, but it's easily like something you just forget about.
Yeah. And, you can be very cautious, but you make the mistake once and then,
Or you just do something where you're not thinking. I've seen people like spraying an electronic device down with a hose and just like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then you point it out to them and then they do the same thing. Like, oh my God, I wasn't thinking, I just was just washing stuff and my brain turned it off.
Yes. It was like, well, it's a box. So they don't think about it. Yeah. So it's a good thing that you have that protection, right? So what happens if you start driving a car and the connector is there? Do you have this sign up?
No, so actually that's done to the OEMs themselves.
Right.
So they won't, the car won't, if it's plugged in, it'll be beeping at you and yelling at you, say like, hey, you got to unplug. So we don't have to worry so much about that. We could worry, if there was like a golf cart or something that was plugged in, like that could be an issue. But again, it's a pretty robust socket. So from our end, it would just deactivate because it would trip the fault sensor. It would probably trip either a voltage drop or overarching or something like that would pop one of the sensors in the device. So it would shut off immediately and then send us a report. the golf cart that's driving around, I don't know what happens to that guy. I'm sure somebody broke his golf cart or something like that, but it's not going to be like the worst thing in the world. But so our system will, at a minimum, just shut off automatically. Because if you had like, imagine it is plugged in and it jerks out like that, it'll trip a bunch of sensors.
Yeah, because if you're passing current through,
Mhm.
then the moment you start disconnecting, you
Right.
have an arc.
Yes, that's the overarching.
Yeah.
So like if
Overarching.
if it gets that, it'll immediately shut off, or it'll detect a voltage drop. Like I'll be like, oh my gosh, there's a huge voltage drop, like shut off. So it just understands that like these things aren't allowed and it just turns off.
So how do you say that you have no experience with EV cars without saying that you have no experience with EV cars by asking this stupid question?
There are no stupid questions. I think that's the thing. I really wish people would stop saying that, because the only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask. I think the smartest people I've ever met always ask just a million questions about all sorts of crazy things and ideas, and you're just like, these are some stupid questions. But truly, like, you should be asking those, because you don't actually know the answer until you've sort of confirmed it. So I think actually there are no stupid questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm just teasing myself. So in Mexico, the infrastructure for charging is not that very well developed yet. So I'm still staying with internal combustion engines and motorcycle. I drive motorcycle most of my week. So,
Absolutely.
So that's why I haven't decided to do the EV jump yet. But when I'm here, I drove a few times. I rented some of the cars. Yeah. And I did drive did a drive test for the Cybertruck once.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Well, you're here now. You should try the Waymos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The self-driving.
Yes, and they're all electric. So it's like that's where it is. Like, that's the future 3 years from now for most of the U.S. with these self-driving taxis going around they're super quiet. You will be shocked at how rapidly a self-driving car becomes very uninteresting and boring, where you don't think about it anymore. Just like the novelty of no driver and the car moves by itself wears off pretty quick. You just sort of accept that this thing is going to take you to where you want to go, and he's usually pretty good. There'll still be mess ups, but it's not so horrible that you're like, oh my God, this is dangerous. It's just like more frustrating than anything else. Anytime I've ridden in a Waymo and I get frustrated, it's because there's an open lane. And I'm like, aggressive enough. Yeah, I'm like, get in the lane, like, I want to go.
Yeah. I mean, I love driving, and I love driving for the sake of driving. So I enjoy the driving experience. Yeah. Right. And then that's another factor for me for not going EV, because EVs are efficient, reliable, and boring to drive. The Cybertruck is fun to accelerate.
I think you're driving the wrong EV.
Well, I was surprised by the Cybertruck, because it does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or something like that, right? Because it doesn't build up, the torque is instantaneous. Yeah. I'm used to the motorcycle. I have a 1000cc motorcycle.
Okay.
So it's high performance. And the Cybertruck accelerates faster, or it feels faster, right? And the reason for that is because you have the torque immediate.
Yes.
Where in the motorcycle, you have to rev it up. So it's more linear, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of feel it, like, you feel the torque going up and up, right? So I was surprised by that. I will still not buy a Cybertruck. I will drive it eventually. Right?
You might be able to get a great deal on one at some point, because no one's buying them.
Yeah. The issue is that the value, the depreciation is much higher than.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's why I tell people today, if you really are interested, now's the best time to buy an EV, because you can go onto the used market and get some steals. So you can get like there's a one that I think I might end up buying. It's the Porsche Taycan, the original EV that they built. The reason nobody really wants them anymore is it's a 200 mile battery, so it's not super long range.
Right.
But this is a sports car. It drives like a sports car. It's a Porsche.
The handling is great.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's only 50K and it's 1 year old. I'm like, and this is almost $150,000 vehicle that came off the line like that. Right. So it's like, there are some really good deals right now for used EVs. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that their demand is low, because they were, low range at the beginning, and now there's a better model out. And so there's like a lot of actual true value, especially on these higher end vehicles like the Cybertruck, where it's, is very expensive to purchase, but now, someone has bought it and then didn't like it and sold it, and now the value has just like completely plummeted. But the vehicle itself, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the vehicle works right within that those expectations.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, for a daily driver, that's
Oh, yeah.
amazing. Great handling, as long as you know that you're going to have this limited range.
Mhm.
Limited still
Yeah,
is
200
more than what
miles.
you
Yeah.
need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it's a Porsche.
I was like, I don't know how many times we're gonna be able to afford a Porsche for so low.
So yeah, I would love to drive those type of cars. Yeah,
Mhm.
because for me it's you have the utility of going to point A to point B, right?
Mhm.
And for that you want something boring.
Yeah.
As a simple. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I keep using the word boring, but yeah, simple. Thank you for reminding. Yeah, but as car enthusiast, that doesn't sound very appealing, right? Because you want the sensation and all that, right? And the vroom vroom is part of it, right?
That is true. That
Yeah.
is true.
They've been trying to simulate it, right, with speakers and whatnot.
They've been required to do that.
Yes.
So there's some interesting applications of that. Like Rolls-Royce, they have their Spectre that it has like more like ominous, I don't know, like a Christopher Nolan type movie sound that when it drives around, it sounds cool. I'm like, oh man, I really actually dig that sound more than like a vroom vroom because it's different, it's new. I don't know. So it's like I think and this is what I talk to people about all the time. Like when you're looking at like the gas vehicle market, you're looking at a fully matured, completely, it's pretty much at the top of its efficiency type of a market. Like there's not much more that is going to come out of this. Like we've pretty much perfected internal combustion engines at this point.
Yes.
So, but when you flip and you look at electric vehicles, like we're just at the very beginning. And so there's a lot of growth that's going to come out of this, a lot of changes that are going to come out of this that I can't even predict what's going to happen. But I know that in 10 years, the vehicles that are sold then are going to be so radically and wildly different than the ones that are on the road today, that I think you will see something that is truly futuristic coming out in the next, decade.
Yeah, I had high hopes for the Audi. Audi
Mhm.
did some interesting sounds for the
Yeah.
e-tron.
Yes.
They put it on the Marvel movies, and and they made this. What is the name of this? There is I'll look it up, but there is a artist that did a lot of cinema movies sound,
Mhm.
and he was part of the development of the sound for the e-tron.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I don't remember his name, but I think he actually worked with Kubrick.
Okay.
So yeah, very well, renowned sound engineer,
Yeah.
artist. Anyway, I think that that's going to be very interesting because that's going to change. What I'm trying to say is that the need for the car enthusiast are about the experience. It's about the journey,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
When you are looking for an utilitarian experience of, I want to go from point A to point B, that when simplistic, I'm learning simplistic experience is more what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to think about the vehicle. You just want to go. It's a mean to an end. Right?
Correct.
So for a car enthusiast, the end is driving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You kind of want to have like a great drive is up here in Marin County. Go across the Golden Gate Bridge and go on some really windy, fun roads to drive a car on.
Yeah. So the way that I see it is I like to drive fast with no hurry. I like to drive slow. I love to just enjoy, going nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Than just driving, right? Depend, all of the experiences of just the driving.
Right.
Yeah. I actually a few times did this. I drove from Guadalajara, Mexico to here.
Wow.
10 times.
It's a drive.
It's 3,600 miles. It's a lot, but it's more time consuming, more expensive, less practical. But oh man, you enjoy the drive. And I still have to do, because sometimes you don't have enough time. But one of the things I want to do is do the coast.
Oh, yeah.
Going from, what is the road? Road 1?
One. Yeah. Highway 1.
Do the 1 instead of the 5. I want to do that. Yeah.
Oh, you should. It's one of the most beautiful drives I've ever gone on.
I did drive Baja California.
Okay.
It's beautiful and it's different because it's isolated. There's nobody there, right? So one time we were in La Paz, which is south of Baja, and we're going to take the ferry. But I had my dog with it, and the dog didn't have enough.
The paperwork?
Something was missing on the paperwork. Some shot, which the dog had, but we didn't have the paper for that. So I told my wife, you know what? I am going to drive north, all the way north, and then south,
Yeah.
because my wife was like, I can fly, take the dog with me, right?
Yeah.
But when you take but for that you need a box, right?
Yeah.
So it was buying the box, and then they put it on the cargo plane, right? But if the pilot forgets to flick a switch, they kill the dog, right? So I was like, I'm not willing to take that risk.
Yeah, no,
Right. Right.
absolutely, yeah.
So
It's super stressful for the dog too.
yeah. My dog is, he's like super cool with, but still, I don't want it to do that, right? So I decided to just drive. And my wife, she's very supportive, but she said, you know what? I love you. I'm taking the plane,
Yeah.
So she's like, she took, so we talk about it. She took my son with her, and they both fly. And then I drive solo with my dog all the way north and then south, which is a little bit longer than coming to San Francisco.
Gosh, that's a long drive.
Yeah, because it's, you have the border, and then if you go north, you have to go from Phoenix to San Diego and then north, right?
Yeah.
But here you have to go south. So
Okay.
it's 20% longer-ish.
It's a drive.
It's a drive. Yeah. So anyway, that shows that I love the, the enthusiast of just, driving. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like I love to drive, sport cars. I love to drive. I'm building a Jeep, a big Jeep, with, 40-inch tires.
Go off-roading.
We put a big V8 into it. We're working it. It's the whole opposite way of EVs, right?
Yeah.
But the issue is that when you're in a small town, you don't have a charger, right? So having gasoline right now, it's the most dependable fuel, right?
Right.
So that's kind of, we went that way, right? But I'm hoping that they're going to come up with an LS. So the LS is the engine that I put into the Jeep, right? But that they're working on an EV LS crate engine. So basically, it's you replace the V8 for an electric engine, and then you have the electronics within the space.
Oh, that's cool.
Where the V8 used to be, right? So, and it connects on the gearbox of the LS.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So basically, you can replace a V8 with an EV.
That's cool.
So I'm hoping that's going to develop.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear a lot about conversions like that. I always assume they just rip everything out and just put in the back because they're so radically different. They're so different that it's like, what are you going to keep?
Yeah, I mean, they with the G-Class, they keep the chassis, they reinforce it, and they put the, what is the name? EQ technology, which is an old technology, a $200,000 car, right?
Yeah, super expensive.
Yeah. So it's not, I believe it's not worth buying it, even if you are looking for EVs, right?
I mean, well, that's why, like, it's been frustrating being in the industry, like, because of that. Like, there's a lot of the older automotive OEMs that, like, Mercedes, who kind of just do stuff like that, where it's almost like, well, fine, you want me to make an EV, fine, here's the EV I'm going to make you, and it's not really a great vehicle, and it arguably probably isn't worthy of the Mercedes name, right? Like they're just throwing out like, you take it because you want it, instead of like, well, let's actually make a cool EV that has Mercedes, like the Mercedes brand built into it. And I think the ones that you're seeing start to succeed versus the ones that you're seeing start to fail are the ones that are actually taking it seriously. And like one of the brands that's slowly starting to come back, back from the dead is Cadillac. And Cadillac made a strategic choice. We're not really going to make too many gas vehicles anymore. We're really going to focus on EVs. We're going to build them from the ground up. And now we're starting to see like the new Lyriq, the new Escalade that just came out are very popular. They're actually like pulling Cadillac, that brand name, back into sort of the luxury class name again. Yeah. So there's these companies that have sort of figured it out. They see that like, actually, this is our path back to sort of, I wouldn't say relevancy because Cadillac was still around, but it was just like, it had lost a lot of its cachet.
Right.
And so like a lot of these OEMs that are focusing on EVs, especially on the high end, those are the ones that are starting to really start to succeed. And I think what you're starting to see now is like the slower trickle down of, we haven't hit like mass market just yet in this industry. Like there's still, the price needs to come down a little bit more to actually make it, hey, this is on par with a Honda Civic, the boring car, the simple car, right? But now we're looking at sort of like, if you're going to look at a BMW 3 Series versus say, the BMW i Series, like they're fairly comparable in terms of price, but then the i Series is just better on like many metrics. So like it's better at handling, better at braking, much faster acceleration. So it's like all the things that you would associate with that 3 Series are better on the i Series. And it's just because the electric car is just a better performance vehicle.
Yeah, I like the BMW i3, I think it is, with the range extender. They had a lot of criticism because it's a range extender, so you cannot do room, you know?
Right.
But on the utilitarian point of view, it's a great vehicle, right? It hasn't picked up that much. I think it was
I
because
think they discontinued it.
I think they were ahead of their time, right? But I think it was a great platform for that.
Oh yeah.
Because you have the benefit of the EV and the benefit of a combustion engine, right? So that's great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that this idea of the G-Class, EQ, whatever it's called, you know, I'm bad with the names of, you know.
The Germans aren't great with naming convention.
The issue is, if you're willing, if you have the money to buy a G-Class, you rather buy the V8,
Right.
you know,
The thing
twin
you
turbo, you know, it has more power, it has, you know, and the difference in fuel, doesn't matter.
Right.
If you want to make a statement about green, you're not going to buy a G-Class. You're going to buy, you know,
some EV
that screams, I'm green.
Right. Up until recently, it was a Tesla, but
yeah, now all that changed.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
So now we're like, well, what's next?
The Cybertruck, I mean, I want to like it. I mean, I don't like the aesthetics. It's too much, you know, in your face. But it's not a good off-roader. It's not
a truck.
No, it's an EV, you know, it's a fashion statement.
Yeah, yes. I told somebody, I think it was a reporter, who was asking me about the Cybertruck, and I'm like, look, like I grew up on construction sites, and I'm like, no construction worker. I mean, there might be a few of it, but more or less, the average construction worker is not buying a Cybertruck. Like it's just, they're not. They're going to go buy an F-150, which by the way, if they want an electric, there's an electric F-150 that you can get that looks exactly like an F-150 car that they want.
All of the accessories are going to fit in, you know, the aftermarket, you know.
And they know how to build it for, you know, a construction site. So there's a nice big deep bed, like it's pretty rugged. There's not a lot of plastic pieces on it. Whereas like you go to the Cybertruck, like the whole bed's like kind of plasticky. It's not a deep bed. It's a weird shape. So you can't like, just things that you would normally think of for a truck bed. You're like, well, I can just throw stuff in it. Well, like because of the angle, it's harder to throw stuff in the back than it is the front. So there's a bunch of things where I'm just looking at them like, I don't know who thought this up, but it's just certainly not a truck. Like, it
was fun to accelerate it.
Yeah.
I did you know, from 0 to, I don't know, 50 was the, you know, 40 was the top speed at, you know, I was in Santa Clara downtown, you know, I didn't have much space to speed it up, you know. So I did from 0 to the speed limit, and that's it. And then I turned around and I said, nice truck, here's the key, bye, you know.
Yeah.
So for that was fun, but it was not practical. I would not buy it.
No.
Yeah. But I do like the idea of Cadillac Escalade electric, because that's, you know, you're looking for there is comfort. So going EV makes it quieter, right? You're looking to carry a lot of people. If you're using a similar suspension, so it's going to be comfortable, and you get the benefit of acceleration, right? So that's nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you are moving around a ton of people, like you can get up these big San Francisco hills, no problem.
Right. Plus you have all-wheel drive, right?
Yeah. So it's, you know, I think we're in this transition phase of, you know, I think people are slowly starting to realize that like a lot of there's hype on both ends, like EVs are going to die and EVs are going to take over. And it's like, maybe not either one of those things are going to happen, right? Like we're at best going to be like a 20% market penetration over the next, you know, 5-10 years, which is a huge number of vehicles, but it's nowhere near like 100% of the cars on the road are going to be EVs. It's nowhere near the 100% of the new vehicle sales are going to be EVs, because people still want gas cars and there's still reasons to buy a gas car. I think you're going to see more hybrids, like more of the plug-in hybrid stuff, but in general, it's going to be a more slow transition. And I think that's fine. There's no reason to be freaking out about the transition speed at which we're going. It's pretty normal technology uptake transition.
Right. So going back to Pando, I was going to ask you if you're thinking of a solution for fleets.
Yes. So fleets are really interesting. It's something that I worked on pretty closely at Evercharge. So one of the things that really saved that company was our pivot from multifamily charging into fleets. Because the technology that we created for the multifamily space, we found out was like almost ideally situated for the fleet space. And so the same is kind of it's not nearly as the same. We have to make modifications to the device. One of the bigger things with a fleet is they typically don't want to have the driver get out and then have to plug it in themselves. They just want to have them come in, like walk around and plug in, and that's fine. So you want like with a
What do you mean? I
so you have to get like you have to bring your own cable in our system.
right.
So let's say it's a taxi cab. You just want to have them come pull out on site, and you don't want to have either anybody have to pull out this thing and plug it in and close the doors back up. They're just going to walk away. And we have the data suggests this from
I see.
other companies that I've worked at that were socket based.
So fleet-based users are not willing to plug the.
Correct. They'll just walk off. They'll just leave. And so when you're doing like an electric vehicle fleet, like what Waymo is doing is you basically hire like your security guard is going to watch the lot at night, but he's also probably going to go around and plug in all these cars.
Also, you're going to have the driver user and the plugger user.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. And so you want to make it so it's simplistic, so they don't have to open a thing up for each car. So you want to have the connected cable in that situation. You also want to make sure that you have some kind of like load management capability. So the other big reason, and this is well solved at this point, but when I was at EverCharge, one of the big reasons that fleet vehicles or even multifamily vehicles weren't getting charging installed was because of simple capacity issues. Power isn't endless. Most buildings only have so much. Once you max that out, that's it.
Oh, I see.
Right. So you either have to call up PG&E, who's our local utility provider, and get them and convince them that you need it, which nowadays they're never going to do, or you have to figure out some other solution, which is power management, which is essentially like, and what Pando is doing is we're moving into something we call edge intelligence, where it's monitoring the entire building load. It's understanding what's in use and what's not in use. So a really simplistic example would be like, hey, the elevators aren't being used right now. We don't need to reserve that power for them because they're not being used. I can transfer that over to the chargers, and I can charge more vehicles because I know that there's this big block of power that's just sitting there idle.
Right.
And so for a fleet vehicle situation, now I can in any of these garages here downtown that are probably totally tapped out of power or have very little available, they all can become, fleet parking because I can tap into the full building power. And I know that a lot of those building systems aren't going to be on all the time, especially at night. But
at night, they have extra capacity.
Plenty of capacity to keep charging. So a lot, and Pando's not the only one that does this, by the way. But
right.
This is certainly something where we're starting to see like more fleet vehicles wanting to go in that direction. And so I think that's probably where we'll see more of those applications from Pando's side. Another really big one is not only for drawing power, but pushing power into the grid. So vehicle to grid technologies have become very advanced. I would suspect that, we're working on pilots today for this technology. We're already seeing like the Ford F-150, which I mentioned, has V2G built in today. Like you can use it to power your home. You do need an inverter because people don't realize that. You have to buy another device. In general, like this stuff exists. And for fleets, it's going to be like really amazing because you could bring in if you had enough vehicles, the more vehicles you have, the more power you have, at some point you basically become like a de facto power plant. And so like, if you see all these like Waymos driving around, like eventually if you start calculating out how much energy that actually is, you're like, oh, that's actually like almost a full power plant of energy just kind of cruising around on the roads every day.
Right.
And so when you want to be able to flatten out the supply demand curve for energy, which is what causes sort of rolling blackouts and brownouts when there's either too much supply or too much demand, what you can do with these vehicles is you can push energy into the grid or pull energy from the grid to help pull that demand curve back to more of a straight line. And so we're starting to see like grid EVs being more of an extension of the grid, right? Which is where Pando is really actually focusing right now. It's trying to make that final linkage for this entire ecosystem to really start to like work together holistically, instead of what has been happening is more like friction based, where it's like EVs draw so much energy. Now the power has to generate a bunch more for it. It creates this thing called the duck curve because there's too much demand and not enough supply, or vice versa. And so it causes all these problems. Right. And we've lived through this problem. We're still living through it because PG&E's rates just keep going up and up and up. But we're almost to the end where, in a few years, it'll go completely away because you'll be able to flatten out that curve completely just because you've made EVs a part of the grid.
Right, because now you can use it can become bidirectional.
That is correct.
So the current Pando product is one direction and you're working on the bidirectional feature.
That is correct. So that should, the first build of that product should be done in late September, early October. So like when I say it's coming, like it's almost here. And then it's more just implementing it in the world.
Right. Yeah. I thought when you were talking about this, I was thinking more of, years.
Like far-flung future, but it's really not. It's like it's right around the corner. We're already starting pilot programs for that particular product this year.
Right. Going back to my initial, comment is you don't see that coming. Like bidirectional box or a non-bidirectional box, you don't see the feature going, but it's happening and the impact is huge.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a user is hard to tell the difference, and so much work has to go through, to make that happen. Right.
And I think a lot of like from the user perspective, we feel like it's just not important for them, right? It's just more like it's a thing that's going to happen without their knowledge and it's not going to be a big deal. And most people, when they hear that, like, well, I don't want, if I come like bring my battery or my car into like late at night, when I hear V2G, my initial freak out is like, well, I don't want to wake up, I don't want to park at 50% and then wake up at 40% because you used my energy.
Right.
And the reality is like that'll never happen. Usually when we're talking about V2G, it's like what we'll take is about like 5%, no more from each vehicle on the road. Because when you have thousands of these things, I don't need all of your battery. I only need a little bit to help flatten out the demand curve.
Right. Because what happens is that you need the demand. You have the demand on a particular spot, but you need to cover that peak demand.
That is correct.
And that's much better to be able to grab it locally and then slowly filling that bucket again, rather than just bringing that demand and going through the whole charge.
That is correct.
Or the whole,
all throughout the grid. Yeah.
The longer you go, the
absolutely.
more expensive.
So yeah, I think we're in like a very exciting time, actually, even though there's like a lot of negativity in the EV space just because of Trump and getting rid of like the incentive monies. But like in general, like everybody that I talk to in the industry is actually very excited about like the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think that the EV technology is getting better and better. I think that, Pando is one of the contributors to that experience, right? To make it a better experience for residential users, for fleet users.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be is going to have a huge impact. The technology in the cars is getting better every year. They're working on different chemistry for the batteries.
Yep.
So that's so one of the issues that are having right now is that the energy density on the batteries is low, is less than gasoline or So they're working on that. There are a few batteries that are getting better on that sense. There is one battery that NASA developed that it's like a tank. I don't remember how it works, but it's basically like a tank. It saves the energy there. So the lithium ion battery has like 10,000 cycles or something like that, or 8,000. This has like 500,000, right? So it's huge, right?
Yeah.
And it's the weight is much lower than gasoline, right?
Yeah.
Per kilowatt or whatever, right? So the energy density is there, but getting from the ISS to your car is going to take a while, right?
Totally.
Until they make it more efficient, right? So I think that's coming, right? Eventually it's coming to the cars, right? That's going to make the car more usable for a broader audience, right? Yeah.
I think, and it's only going to improve the user experience for everybody. Because if you can get the weight lower, then you can take out a lot of like you can put lower power motors in there. Right. And with lower power motors, you have a cheaper car, and like now you start to see like the prices start to really drop, and then you do get that Honda Civic, that $15,000, $10,000 EV, and that's where I think we will see that this decade.
Yes, I think that's coming. Yeah, I hope, as a car enthusiast, that they're working also on this concept of synthetic fuel.
Okay.
So one of the issues with when you burn gasoline or whatever, or diesel, but mostly gasoline, is the CO2, right? But what you're doing is you're basically extracting energy from the ground, and then when you burn it, you generate CO2 into the environment.
Right.
But the synthetic gasoline, what it's doing is absorbing that CO2 from the environment.
Right.
And it's generating
gasoline
or whatever it is. Right? My chemistry probably is not accurate, but you get the
right. Yeah.
Right? So if you burn that, then it becomes carbon neutral.
Right.
Right. So, and we already have developed all the technology for the gasoline engines, right? Or fuel, right? Internal combustion engines, right? So if we can come with a synthetic fuel that it's lower the cost than, petrol-based gasoline, then it will make more sense to use that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Keep all the infrastructure that we already have, right?
Right.
I think that that doesn't mean because of that, then we should not develop EVs. I think that these are two different things.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, they're probably, what we're going to see is more like use case based. For example, like for my car that I drive around the city, I'll probably just have that as an EV because it doesn't make sense to have a gas car and have a charger at home. I just plug it in and I don't drive that far. But for maybe, if I want to go super long distances or rental cars, right? Like I fly into an airport, I don't know where I am, this new city. I'm going to go rent a car and drive around. It makes more sense to have a gas car because the infrastructure to power that vehicle is everywhere. Whereas if I am in a new city and I'm trying to figure out where the charging stations are at and my hotel doesn't have one, then I'm kind of like, I don't know where to charge this thing.
Yeah. What do you do with a car, right?
Right.
You use it until it dies, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So it's one of those situations where like I think more people don't understand that we are probably going to end up with a mishmash of different things.
Or you have this classical Porsche,
and the new one.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have the new one for daily driving, and then you have the classical with the Boxer engine.
Yep.
Right. Or a motorcycle. The motorcycle. Part of the things that I like about the motorcycle is that the experience of the engine, the wind, and all that stuff, right? Plus, you have the acceleration of a sport car, of a Countach, or what is the name of the Ferrari, of a high performance vehicle in a
tiny little
package, cheap,
Yeah.
motorcycle, right? So for the experience, it would be great to have that synthetic fuel. And then you can enjoy it for the experience, right? And then you can have the practicality of EVs for everyday use.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, we're almost there. I think it will happen eventually. It's just, we just need, I think, it's just humans are impatient. We want things faster than they can happen. And we kind of just have to iterate through them. And then eventually we'll get there. And the other side of this is if you want faster, you're going to have to, invest more money into it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, we got to the moon in a decade, but, the amount of money that we had to pump into NASA to achieve such a thing was massive. I think it was like 27% of the GDP, the budget at one point. It was a huge chunk, of our national budget. So, I mean, if you want to get these things ramped up, unfortunately, the best investor on the planet Earth is the U.S. government. They have enough money to pump into all these programs. And now China's kind of caught up as well. So they do the same. But the more investment we can put into like new technology, I think the faster these things are going to come out.
Yeah. So you're saying that there's lack of political willing to make this happen.
Right. I think really, generally speaking, because EVs and all the, some of these like renewable energies also came under this as well. I mean, climate change in general is a political topic, even though it shouldn't be. That's the problem, or it's the reason that a lot of these things kind of get bogged down or slowed down because there's a political fight when there really shouldn't be one, right? It's a technological fight that, you can let these things kind of grow organically and feed them both money and see which one wins out over time. But instead it became a political thing. And now people are fighting about, oh, it's a lie and it's a scam. All of a sudden, like, well, it's not. You can go use these cars and drive great. But it's one of those things where I think if we can pull politics out of some of this stuff, I think a lot of it it'll be much easier to deal with.
Right. There is a book I don't remember the name, but it's something like How to Spend $78 billion. It's something like that. That's the name of the book. The number could be wrong, but some $1 billion.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a bunch of scientists. They put together different proposals on how to improve the world, and they took the budget from something like, I don't remember what it was, but it was money that the government was spending, and they were like, well, if we spend this money on this, then all of this is going to be better, right? It was zero politics. It was from the technocrats,
Oh yeah.
People that know their stuff, and they kind of voted what would be the best way to spend that money to improve the world. So it's kind of what you're talking.
Yeah, I mean, there's balance to be had in everything, but more or less, yes. I think politics just get out of the way for technology's sake. Just get out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, I In Argentina, there's been a socialist movement for the last 20 something years.
Right.
And they basically took Argentina, to a 70,000% inflation. Right now, Milei got in and he's doing better, right? Well, I think they're doing better. Right?
I think the statistics prove that as well.
Yeah, the macroeconomic is way better.
Yeah.
He reduced inflation. But for 20 something years, people voted
Right.
for this party. Right? Politics is
It's messy.
It's messy. So before we wrap it up, I have a question that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Before I forget.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Microsoft Develop.
We were talking a little bit earlier, so I'm glad we're going to get it for your viewers and listeners. So Microsoft Develop was actually a program acquired from Nokia. Right. So my first job when I got out here was as an intern for Nokia. I didn't work on the Develop program when I first got there. I was in charge of merchandising on the Windows Phone store, which meant I was actually, if you went on a Windows Phone back in 13 and you were in the United States and you looked at all the apps that were on the Windows Phone store, I was the one who was responsible for putting those apps in those places. So that was my job when I first got there. I did a pretty good job at that, and opening on the Develop team came around, and that team was really had this wild idea for the time, which was an application development platform that was gamified. And so we would teach people how to make an app and then make it successful just through simple challenges in games. Right. And then we would give people, anytime you completed one of the challenges, you'd get some points. And then you could, it was kind of like a carnival or like an arcade game back in the day where you get like the tickets. So you get all your points, and then you can go to our store and buy, all sorts of, Nokia products, and then later on Microsoft products.
Interesting.
So it was like a really good way to, like, if you couldn't afford like the flagship phone, you could go get one, or you could get a development kit. You're like, oh, I really want to learn how to, make apps for, the Nokia Lumia 1020 or whatever. I can go buy one now with my points. That program was so successful that at its peak, 75% of all the Windows Phone apps in existence had gone through that program. And so it was like really highly sought after when Microsoft acquired Nokia. Microsoft more or less laid off the great majority of Nokia employees and kind of just like shuttered the company, that piece of the company. Nokia still exists. They only sold off a piece of the company to Microsoft. My team and about 100 other people from across the US were actually integrated into Microsoft, and Microsoft really wanted that product. And
they wanted to keep that product, right?
They wanted, yeah, because they were seeing it as like, and at that time it was like an app race, like how many apps each platform had. And it was like, Apple Store had like 100,000 apps, and the Android Store had, because it was more like 300,000 apps. And then Windows Phone was like 20,000. Like they were like, okay, we got to catch up. Like that's a really bad selling point for us.
This is a time where Microsoft was
struggling,
fighting to get it into the smart
phones. Yeah, because they kind of fumbled it away a few times. And so to catch up, they decided we'll acquire Nokia, and they're trying to get us to help sort of boost up the apps. The problem that we had found was that we had a system that created apps really, really well. It incentivized people to create an app. The problem was that they would only create an app up to a certain point, get stuck, and then start over. Right. And so what they were basically creating was a bunch of junky, non-usable apps. It was like I called it a crap generating system. And we came in, like there were some apps that were really, really good that came out of this, but the great majority were just nothing, non-usable. And so my job when I came into that team was like, fix this problem. And so I essentially I completely tore up the script and made the game all over again. And if you have played Fortnite or anything like that, where it has like the leveling system with the battle pass, you get like certain rewards at certain stages. And I actually before this even came out, that's exactly what I devised for Develop, was essentially like, if you get to level 10, you get, X number of points, or you get a phone or whatever, right? And it was just designed to get people, instead of like, I get to a point and then stop and then start over, it's to take it like, no, you should learn more at this step, because at this step, you're going to get this really, this big bucket of points, or, a cool phone or something, and start to just slowly pull people down the line further and further, so that they are maturing the apps that they started building, that they wanted to build something that's more polished. So like the end game was to get them to a polished state.
Right. So it's, you design incentives so people will keep investing on the application they already built.
Right. So like the
Rather
whole
than starting
idea,
from scratch.
yeah. And so we did that for a bit and that worked out a little bit, but then we realized that now we needed to teach these people how to make businesses because we realized that, well, they make an app, but now they don't know how to make money off the app. Now what we're asking them to do is like really complicated and technical and it's going to take them time. And there needs to be like an actual monetary reward, not a phone. They're like, at some point I'm going to do so much work. I'm like, I don't want a phone anymore. I want to be able to buy my own phone and pay my rent. And
Right.
so we had to then to tear that system up and rebuild it again, which got them to focus on downloads, app rating, and one more thing. And I can't remember what it was at this point because we never got to that point. We never built it.
You have ratings for the app?
Yeah. So it was like you could get app ratings. We taught people how to do that. That was the only pillar that was actually built. The other two, we never got built. Oh, the third one was revenue.
Oh, revenue.
Yeah. So that was the first one we built because I proposed the system and the Microsoft people were like, well, if this doesn't work, you've torn up like the system that does work and you started all over. So you need to prove it. And so what we did was we started this whole challenge of just focus on app reviews and teach people how to get good reviews, how to incentivize better reviews, all these things that you kind of have to do as a business, an app business. And it raised app review scores by something like over 100%. It was crazy. Wow. By just following these little changes to like your behavior and how you do something instead of just like randomly asking somebody. Well, the first thing was nobody was asking. We're like, just put in this one line of code that after, X number of uses, for when they open it, it pops up and says, like you see on like app stores now, where it's like, are you enjoying this app? Nobody on Windows Phone was doing that. No one was asking anybody about just give me a rating. And then the next one was like, if you get a bad rating, instead of like it directly submitting to the store, have it push it to like, oh, can you write me feedback instead? And then don't let it submit. Because you don't want because then you want you want feedback, but B, you also don't want that bad score because what we also found is like once you started getting bad scores, like it just like piles on and then it's really hard to get out of a bad score cycle. So you kind of did want, feedback on some level. So we got people to focus on it. We like drove up the scores. And then that's when, like I was explaining, that's when we were taken from our home here in the Bay Area and we were moved up to Redmond at HQ. And that's when we learned that not only like we thought we were the only ones building this thing within Microsoft because we were the ones that were brought over like, oh, well, they really want us. And so we'll have like our, lay of the land. We do whatever we want. We show up, there's 4 or 5 other teams that are building almost identical products. And we were like, oh, this is great. Look how many people we're going to have rolled up underneath us. Like we're going to really like drive this. I thought I was going to be at Microsoft for the next like 10, 15 years building this product.
Right.
And so I was super excited. And then like maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm like, why are all these teams like, we never meet them? Like, what's going on? And they're like, oh no, like our boss came in like, no, I don't think you understand. Like we're in competition with them. This is not a collaborative environment. It's a competitive environment. And so we have to build the best product better than them. And whoever wins, wins. And it's just turned like from that point, the whole, the game board was flipped over basically. And it was like chaos then reigned in our product. And it just got slowly ripped up over time. People left and they didn't want to work on it anymore because it was just like, it's so political. It was so cutthroat. It just got to a point where you're like, I don't want to work here anymore. Like this isn't fun to build something when I can't even trust one of the, another team in Microsoft to, hey, help me out, like figure out this problem. Hey, let's work together to solve it. It's more like, no, if I go to them and I tell them what problem I'm trying to work on, they'll try to sabotage me and then they'll take my idea and put it into theirs.
Right. So you
don't want to work with them. You're like, so you start to silo yourself back off. And I'm like, and if you ever use Microsoft products, that's why, at least at that time, that's why a lot of those products never really worked out well. Because personally, I don't believe that that's a really good way to build great product. It's actually a great way to build a lot of bad products.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I used to work at Microsoft and I saw that happening. I mean, it was different because I was not at that moment. I was in Argentina, so it was it was mostly they were mostly selling boxes, right? Like we have a Windows server, how many you want,
right? Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, But then consulting was very competitive, and I could see people like getting fired for different mistakes that they commit, right? So it was very competitive. And in that environment, what happens is that your creative brain shuts off, and then you go to your lizard brain, right? And then it's like fight or flight, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
It becomes this, zombie movie. So, it's like, whoever hoards more food is going to survive.
Right.
And then you have somebody, knocking at the door, and don't let them come in because they got bitten. And somebody says, oh, poor person, let them get in, and let they get in, and then, everybody dies, So yeah, it becomes very, when you're working that without that level of trust, it becomes wearing.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. But I love Develop. That was like, I tried to spin that up at so many other companies. I was like, I know this works. I know it works. Let me finish it, please. And it just, I couldn't ever get it back off the ground. I think it was one of those products that was right for its time, and now it's gone.
Yeah. Now it's a whole different world. Yeah. At that time I was using Pan 3E. You probably know what I'm talking about, right? I was using it at Microsoft, and then somebody says, I should recommend you don't use that here because we are a Microsoft company and we should promote Windows or whatever.
Eat your own dog food.
Yeah. And I was, okay, then give me a phone and I'll use it, right? It's like, no, you have to buy your own. So,
they at least gave us.
I was at a level of the company that they wouldn't, right? But they had it for more, senior executives, right? And somebody eventually gave me a used one. It's like, lend me, go and try it. But the speed and the, functionality of the Palm 3E exceeded what the Windows phone could do, right? The battery would last for weeks and days, whatever. And then the other one was 4-6 hours, whatever.
Yeah.
It was very short battery. So it was like, this is not working. I'll say with the Palm 3.
Yeah.
Or the Nokia phones,
Yeah. I mean, Nokia made some great phones, and
they were robust.
It was a shame. It was the first company I worked for out here, and I always miss it. I wish I would have stayed there if it continued forward in that way.
Right. Yeah. I don't think they're doing phones anymore.
No, they do networks. So they were focused on 5G, they didn't do so well. Right. And now I'm not sure. I think they mostly live off Nortel patents for the time being. Right. So I'm not sure. I don't know what the future holds for Nokia.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought they were almost extinct, but I understand that they haven't.
The Finnish government will continue to prop them up because they do employ quite a large number of the Finnish population. Yeah. So, but I'm not entirely sure what the future, where they're going to go next. Because at one point Nokia was making tires for cars.
Really?
Yeah, Nokia used to be a massive conglomerate.
Right.
And so now they've narrowed significantly over the last 50 years.
Right. Yeah. Right. Which is, circling back to what we're talking about startups, is one of the things that I like about startups is that within the chaos, sometimes it's a little more chaotic than corporate, but you have the opportunity to pivot more faster or build stuff faster than corporations. Right?
Oh yeah. I just like it because I think Microsoft was one of those companies where I finally I had enough of the pitting each other against each other. I like startups because it's a collaborative environment. Right. We're all on the same team. We're all trying to make this thing work. And so it's not like I'm fighting with, the sales team. I'm like, no, I want the sales team to be really good because we all want to succeed together.
Yeah. Or the startup dies in whatever runway we have.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because if I'm not helping them, then we're all in the same boat together.
Yeah. We can see the cliff together,
so we got to start
together because we're going to die. Yeah.
Awesome.
So Joseph, thank you very much for being here. I think it's great. We have great conversation. Looking forward to hear more about what you guys are going to do with Pando.
Absolutely.
Right? And keep me updated.
I will.
We'll post information about you guys on the notes of the episode.
Okay.
So people can reach out. And thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. This was wonderful.
Awesome.